Hey guys, we're here at the Promar Studios. I'm Gil Hernandez.
Steven, Howie.
And we are gearing up for ICAST in Florida. We have a lot of cool things we want to share with you guys. But before we get started with that, I just want to let you guys know something that our deception jigs have been something that's really been a key point for our company here at Promar Ahi USA. And Ahi was one of the first companies that actually put a printed image on a jig, and this jig here is something that I've used for rockfish, yellowtail, but most importantly, as you all know, in the kayak, using the deception jigs, the 1 ounce fishing calico bass, sand bass, and that reaction bite as they flicker through the water, and those bass just grab them. Have you ever been to my seminars? We talk about that $100 bill that's fluttering down. Those fish just grab onto those deception jigs because of that printed image, and it's something that we're really proud of here at Ahi USA and Promar. That it's something that has changed the market for us, and not only on the West Coast, but it's actually changed the market, and it's changed the market on the East Coast as well. Steven, you want to talk a little bit about that?
I can, but I got questions first. So you sounds like you've been fishing these things for a while, right? So how many years think you've been?
Oh gosh, probably these jigs specifically, I would say 3 years, 2.5 to 3 years.
Wow. So you call it this, so I'm naive to the whole West Coast. I'm an East Coast guy, right? So you call it a $100 bill fluttering?
Yes, it is.
To that? You got to explain that.
So basically in my seminars what I talk about is fish, the calico bass, and I would say a freshwater bass
and
too.
I have caught one, by the way.
Yes, you have.
They're impressive.
So we've been on trips together as well, and bass need food structure and current.
Right.
And those bass are always looking up. I always talk about this kelp style fishing, and they're always looking for something. They're like a lot like a house cat. You know, a calico, a bass in general, they like to bite on reaction.
Correct.
And what better reaction of a $100 bill that's fluttering down from the sky?
I got you.
You know, a lot of my seminars that I do, I talk about that, and people really can't relate to a reaction bite. And well, what is a reaction bite? And I say, well, what a reaction bite is if I dropped a $100 bill from the ceiling, are you all just going to look at it and hit the ground? And especially if I told you that sometime during this seminar, during this show, a $100 bill is going to flutter down. I guarantee you guys are going to be looking up the whole time, waiting for that $100 bill to flutter down. And that's what the bass are doing. Their $100 bill is the food that they're feeding on.
Right.
Because they're feeding fish, right? And all the fish that we're fishing for are feeding fish.
It's the same way.
And that reaction bite, this $100 bill comes fluttering through their face, and what are they going to do? They're going to grab on it.
Right.
And here in the West Coast, we like to do a lot of cast and wind fishing, you know, whether it's deep water fishing where we're fishing either the Mexican rockfish down to deep waters as far as 600 feet deep, or we're yo-yoing yellowtail, or we're catching the mahi, or for me, catching the spotted bay bass in the bays, or the calico bass and the sand bass off the break walls. And the cool thing I like about these baits is usually when we get that good current going on, you get a lot of fish that are schooled up, and you can get those fish, they're just biting, right? And instead of finessing a fish, you can get on that reaction bite. And I think that's what anglers love here in the West Coast, is they love that reaction bite, right? They like to throw a bait, they want to wind it, and they want to get a fish on it right away.
We call it power fishing on these guys.
Power fishing, yes, power fishing. So finesse fishing, power fishing.
How does the actual image on there really help you in your opinion?
Great question. So on the West Coast, you know, we've always thrown jigs that are always like painted jigs, but we're firm believers in matching the hatch, which you probably heard, right? Match to hatch.
100%. Yep.
And our fishery here, they feed off of sardines, mackerel, and that image on there has actually changed the way you fish, because those fish are actually chasing those baits, you know? And I think a lot of the baits that are out in the market now today, they're trying to capture that image, right? With either spray painting them before they go on the boat, or they're trying to somehow match the hatch in their own way. But we actually have an actual screen image of these fish on these jigs.
Printed on there, correct?
Printed on there,
wrap,
yeah.
So the quality in which it stays on is so much better.
And the great things about these is that we bang these up. Let me just grab a bigger one to show you folks at home there. We bang these up a lot, especially like Long Beach break wall, fishing heavy structure on we call it the pipe in Dana Point. You know, we're fishing like 45 feet of water, 60 feet of water, sometimes 90 feet of water, fishing just a rock pile to get these fish to react. They're biting on these things, and we're getting that reaction bite that we want from them because of these images that are so awesome on them.
So what images do you, I mean, I'm going to play stupid here, but I know to a point, but I mean, I don't know it near as passionate as you do. What are the dominant images? Is there certain times a year that image works better because that's the bait of choice that's going on running?
Yeah, I would say like it all depends to what's running. We always do really well on the macro baits, you know, anything mackerel. Sardine gets bit, it depends. Like I usually get bit more on sardine in like the Long Beach area. But like more down south, when you get more towards like the San Diego, that sardine, right? Or even that mackerel.
Warm water,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. The warmer the water, that mackerel, that sardine is something that those fish are constantly, they're feeding on. And so you start throwing those baits, getting those reaction bites out there. For me, I always have it in my arsenal at all times. I always have one or two tied up. A lot of finesse fishing goes on here as well, especially fishing pylons for bass and stuff. But I'm traditionally a tournament fisherman, just like yourself. Right. And so when you want to get 5 fish in the boat right away, what better way to do it than power fishing, right? You know, power fishing them, throwing a spinnerbait, right? We're throwing a spinnerbait, one with a crankbait, want to get these fish in the boat right away, treble hook style baits. This is the perfect bait for me as far as what's working for me to get those fish in the boat. As far as I take a client out, hey, we have a wide open bite. We're not going to lose a fish on a treble hook, you know? And that's something that's been really good for me as far as like you hook that.
It's so funny you said that. So when you fish at tournaments, no matter what the go-to bait is, then you always tie one on, right?
Yes.
I cannot tell you a tournament I did not have a gold spoon tied on in the past 20 years tournament fishing. I mean, literally since I was a kid, in the first tournament I fished on, I always had a gold spoon tied on. Period. Yeah. It's a go-to bait. It's Old Faithful. It works. When you got to put fish in the boat, it works. Everyone always says West Coast different from East Coast. The more I'm hearing, I think that's not so true. We're a lot alike.
Yeah. So let's talk about that, Steven. So talk about when you first walked in. You're telling me the story about it's a great story.
Been in the industry a long time, right? And the owner of Promorar, Ben, reached out to me and said, "Hey, I want you to come in and possibly come on and join the team." And I sat in the showroom, and these deception jigs were hanging on the wall. And we started talking and stuff, and it was very evident that everyone who worked here fished a bunch and knew what they were talking about. I got that very, very quick. And I said, "So can you do that image on anything?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Can you do other images?" He goes, "Sure." And a light bulb goes off. So that's roughly 5 years ago, right? Yes. And in the back of my mind, I've been a redfish tournament guy forever, an inshore guy forever, born and raised in Florida, whole 9 yards. You know, what you consider deep and what you consider shallow is not what I consider deep and shallow, right?
Yes.
Never forget the first time that y'all got on my boat and you said, "Your depth under doesn't even work." I'm like, "You're right, I don't use it." When I want to know how deep it is, I look over the side of the boat. If I can see the bottom, it's in 3 foot of water, I'm good. If it's 4 feet of water, it's too deep. So do you ever fish in less than 4 foot of water?
Never.
See, I don't fish ever deeper than 3 foot of water, right? It's one of those deals. So anyways, fast forward here, about last summer, Ben came to me and he was like, "Hey, let's put this idea you have and let's start getting some traction with it." I said, "Okay, fine." Weedless spoon is probably the most universal lure in the saltwater market for inshore to catch, a wide variety of species. So there's redfish, snook, trout, tarpon, you name it, jacks, they're gonna eat it. And he's like, "Well, why?" I go, "Because honestly, anybody can use it." And they match the hatch very easy. Gold spoon, there's a saying out there that we think all little redfish were born with a gold spoon in their mouth. I believe that. The first redfish I ever caught was on a gold spoon. So we want to take it to the next level. So he's like, "Okay, what image you want to put on there? Do you want to put bait fish?" I'm like, "Yes and no." He's like, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "I don't know how many giant bull reds I've seen come and try to eat a small trout that I'm reeling in while in the flats." So you're reeling a trout this big, and a 30-pound bull red is attacking the trout that you're reeling in on a jig or a spoon. So you can't tell me they don't eat their own kind, right? Wow. They do it a lot, right? Yes. Bass do the same thing, right?
Yeah, I was going to say that. Bass, how many times have we seen it, right?
Exactly.
We got chasers, they want that fish.
And it goes the other way too. Yeah. A lot of guys, especially in South Texas, to tell you stories, they actually, their preferred bait is essentially a grunt. All it is a baby redfish.
Yeah.
And that's their number one bait they use to catch giant, I'm talking 12, 13, 15 pound trout, monster gator trout, right? So, and I've always seen that. I've heard stories, guys catching baby redfish and a 5-pound trout eat the redfish.
Wow.
So that's where my mind sort of going.
Yeah.
I'm like, "Hey, you know what? Let's see if we can get this technology, work with our guys. Let's get a redfish pattern put on a spoon." And that's how this came to fruition, right? And then on top of that, we said, "Hey, we need to make that wobble unique to us." That's where we bent the nose of these guys. And it was actually one of our guys in the office, Steve here. He had the idea. There you go, West Coast meets East Coast. I never would even think of the idea. He's like, "Hey, why don't we bend the nose of these things? We bend our stinking deception jigs all the time to change the flutter to the bottom." And I'm like, no brainer. So he honestly bent one of the prototypes we had. And here I go off to Louisiana a few weeks later, take my son out there, He's 9. You know, he doesn't lay into a fish hard, especially not like I. I mean, my buddies think I'm going to come back with a set of lips one of these times. I set it so hard.
Yeah.
My little guy doesn't. First fish he caught, 30 plus inches, spoon's buried down his gullet.
Nice.
Didn't change the hookup ratio. Actually made it better. With that bend, it increases the wobble pattern, plus it makes it more weedless. Yeah. So it's kicking the hook back when it comes to the grass. No hydro hangs up on it.
Yeah.
So it's actually a big improvement. So from there, once we had that kind of the mold done, if you will, and the bends how we want it, then we put some patterns on, and match the hatch is what came to mind 100%.
Yeah.
We were doing a photo shoot in Port St. Joe. It was cold. Dude, Florida's not cold, right?
Yeah, no, it's not cold at all.
We launched the boat. My whole deck of my boat had a sheet of ice on it. Okay.
Wow.
It was 30 degrees when we launched the boat. Everyone had their plants covered because a hard freeze came through. It's blowing like 15 miles an hour. I'm in like 4 layers. My other pro staff guy, Ken Mott, he's in 4 layers. There's like a bunch of Eskimos out there trying to walk around fish. First flat we go to, here comes a redfish from my right to my left coming across, and I'm like, we're going to know right now.
Nice.
I let him by 30 feet, the way past him, brought it by his nose, hailed it. The only problem is he ate it so hard it was down his crushers, and you couldn't even see the spoon come out of his mouth, so it didn't work for pictures.
Wow.
Right? And I'm like, holy cow, this worked. And there we go. I caught some on the redfish pattern and the trout pattern, right? But then I noticed, not that one, the pinfish pattern.
Pinfish.
Caught like 15 of them.
Nice.
I'm like, what the heck? So finally, sun gets up. I look out, and here comes a whole school of like 30, or like, I shouldn't say 30, probably 2 dozen or so pinfish take off front of the boat. The exact same size as this.
Nice.
Match the hatch dead on.
And ask me this, Steven. So I've been to Florida a few times for some trade shows. This year is my first time actually visiting Florida, which is weird. First time going to Florida. So, and talking to those folks at shows, like when I pick this up and I see how light this is like the difference, right?
That's heavy.
Yeah.
That's heavy.
This is heavy for Florida. So this is where it's crazy, right?
This is light.
Yeah.
That's quarter.
So explain to me, a West Coast guy. So we're using big, heavy reels. Like I'm throwing Abu Garcia Beast reels on this, 65-pound braid, heavy rods.
And this is where the East Coast makes fun of the West Coast.
Yeah.
I'll be very honest with you.
I get it.
How big of a fish you catching?
1.5 pounds to 2 pounds. But on a bad day, let's say on a good day, we're catching 6 pound, but we're fishing deeper water, right? We're fishing some deeper water.
This is the funny part. This is where West Coast and East Coast, I have an argument till the cows come home, including my dad. I can already hear him back in my head.
We look good doing it, though.
We make fun of all those guys who spend all that fuel and go way offshore and catch these groupers that are this big, and my dad and I spend $2 or 2 gallons of fuel, go out in the local flat, and we're catching redfish and snook this big.
Yeah, so explain. So that's what I want to get down to, like, because our goal here at Promar Ahi USA is we want to get people fishing.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
And
that's why I picked this.
Are we talking spinning setups?
Yes.
We talking so over here, and things have been changed in the West Coast. Spinning gear was like you get laughed at.
Exactly. Oh, I do. I do all the time. I bring out my coffee
changing.
grinder and they laugh at me. But you know what? I catch fish.
Yeah, I think the tides are changing now. But and there's some new products come out. We're used to big bait casting reels, heavy rods, Spectra, all that kind of stuff. Like, what's a setup? Like,
here's the reason why. And so I'm not knocking the bait cast stuff because there is application I do it in where we do throw a 50-pound Spectra, we throw 65-pound Spectra, and it really the Gulf region, and most folks don't realize this, and I'm sure California's the same way. Florida really does have probably 7 or 8 distinct fisheries in it. And let me get into it. And they're super close. Look, Florida's a sandbar.
Yeah.
It's 140 miles at its widest spot. That's it. It's not. It's literally a sandbar. Okay. Jacksonville has got severe tides. You got 4 tides a day. The tide can swing anywhere from 4 to 7 feet 4 times a day. That's a lot. You go over to the Panhandle, not 150 miles. It's sometimes only a 2 tide day, and it might only move a foot each tide.
Wow.
Totally different. Jacksonville water, no grass, all oysters, mud, and sawgrass. You go to Panama City in the Panhandle, crystal clear blue water, as clear as the water you got here, pure sand bottom, gorgeous grass flats, fish can see, totally different, okay?
Yes.
So when you're fishing super, super clear water, you got to use super small spectra so you can cast forever. I was telling some guys stories earlier that Tampa Bay is arguably probably the most heavily pressured inshore fishery in the state. There's more, I've heard a stat, there's more captains there than any other place in the state. Maybe that's changed, I don't know, because I know the Keys has a ton too, right? But as far as inshore captains go, Tampa leads the whole area.
Okay.
So you have a lot of people chasing the same poor little redfish and snook around all day long. So we would always call, educated fish. You find a school of redfish, they're not gonna eat, they're educated. Well, all the tournament guys, Tampa Bay fish, Port St. Lucie fish, not Port St. Lucie, pardon me, Port Charlotte fish further south, and anywhere in between. Those are college-educated fish. They're the smartest redfish that we've ever pushed. You're in your boat, and that's why you see I got a silicone wedding ring on, right?
Yeah.
You can't even have a metal wedding ring on when you're push pulling your boat because that noise.
They're the white sea bass.
Gone.
They're the white sea bass of fish.
Gone. Yes, gone. I mean, all you're seeing, is tails that way because they're taking off on you, right? So in order to get to those fish that might be 100 yards away, you need 10, 15-pound spectra.
Okay.
You need 3 feet of 15-pound test fluorocarbon line. You need quarter-ounce spoons that are this big where you can get an 8-foot rod and throw it as far as you possibly can. Guys can throw these things 80 yards.
Got it.
And you can't do that with a bait caster with 10 pounds.
Yeah,
it's impossible,
and
right?
I would have to say that the intimidation, there's intimidation things when it comes to, talking to a lot of people, and especially when I was younger growing up, the Tatty 45s, things of that nature, there's a little intimidation about it, of how to tune it, how to throw it. And talk about out of the box. Like for me, out of the package, this is...
Your tune and go.
Yeah, we're going.
There's literally, I went over that a little while ago too. There's really a few things you look for. All these spoons are gonna come with their weed guard pushed down like that. Does nothing. Any weeds are gonna go into a hook. So basically you wanna make sure, and I check normally every other cast, you're gonna push that weed guard up. So on a redfish or a snook, whatever hit that, he's gonna push that weed guard down, he's gonna get hooked, he's done.
Got it.
That's it. That's all you gotta do.
And that's pretty simple, right?
And the one thing, super. And the one thing you want to add onto these is a loop knot. I know y'all don't use too many loop knots over here because most of you got a split ring there or whatever. You're tying directly to that. You do not want to do that with a spoon. You're going to greatly decrease the wobble pattern on this if you tie your knot directly to this.
Oh.
It's because you have 30-pound fluorocarbon, 30-pound leader, whatever, tied to that. It's not going to wobble. Okay. You tie a loop knot there, it's free wobble. You basically it's an inside or it's a handmade split ring there, if you will. The other thing that I've always been taught, and I swear it works, eliminate as much metal when you're throwing artificials for inshore species as possible. I didn't want to put a swivel on this. I did not want to put any kind of O-ring on. Nothing. I want just the eye, and I want a knot loop knot to that. You eliminate all metal. You want this to look as natural as possible when you're doing it.
Got it.
That in its little things, you start adding these up. That's why the guy who catches 20 redfish instead of 5 in a day.
Nice.
That's how it works.
So to wrap this kind of up, Steven.
Yep.
What would you say to someone out there that's never fished before, right? And maybe they fished here and there, but they want to get into the sport. They live in Florida or they live in some place where these redfish and these species bite these types of lures. What is your advice to them as far as sizing, what to get them started? And maybe they're not looking to catch a trophy fish. Maybe they're just looking to catch fish in general.
So that's why, honestly, I picked a spoon. So when you were talking about tournament guys, you always have one tied on because it's Old Faithful, you always catch a fish, right? All the soft plastics in the world that are on jig heads and stuff, you have to have a knack for that. You got to be able to work a soft plastic, you got to be able to work a worm for bass fishing, that kind of thing. This, you don't. You literally throw it as far as you can and you have a steady retrieve and reel it in. I can take the most novice, never touch the fish. Heck, I did it with my grandmother 20 years ago. Put her in a boat. She grew up catching what we call stump knockers, which is a little bit, bluegill type of fish on the west coast of Florida, and catfish her entire life. Brought on my flats boat. I said, Grandma, tie one of these things on. Here's how you do it. Just steadily reeve it in. And actually, she's like, that's it? That's all you do? Wham! 25-inch redfish.
Nice.
It's one of the stupidest, easiest lures to fish. You add our technology with the bent nose and the images on here, it's a no-brainer. Yeah. I mean, it's super easy. That's what's so easy about it, right? Yeah. And here's the other great thing about redfish. This ain't snook. Snook, everything will be right, and them boogers still won't bite. A redfish, they normally work with you.
Yeah.
They're gonna bite. They're aggressive, they're strong, they're beautiful fish, they fight very, very well. There's a reason why they're probably the most prolific fish throughout the entire South region. Doesn't matter if it's in Corpus Christi, Texas, or Louisiana freshwater marsh, to the glades in South Florida, to the marsh up in North Carolina. Them boogers are everywhere. They're hardy. They can handle hot water, cold water. They always bite.
Yes.
It's literally like a Florida largemouth.
Yeah.
They will bite anything. So that is a great species to introduce a new fisherman to with these kind of lures.
And I know I was talking with you before we did this, is I've only caught 2. One was this big and one was a big one.
We're gonna fix that by the way.
And it changed my life forever. It is one of the most hardest fighting fish that I've ever caught.
This has happened.
In like 3 feet of water.
This has happened, okay? A dozen times in my lifetime, okay? Grew up in Florida doing this kind of stuff. I was very, very lucky. My dad introduced me to redfish and snook when I was about 8, 9 years old, okay? I've caught a 10-pound bass, whatever. But I was 12 and 13. Cool, great, whatever. But because I caught snook doing it, I'm like, I'm done. Like freshwater's ruined for me. I have met numerous bass guys, hardcore. All I'm gonna do is bass my whole life. They got the $80,000 bass boat. That's what they do.
Yes.
They, hey, can I go fish with me one day? And I go, sure. And I said, but you cannot hold me responsible. And they go, what are you talking about? And I said, you cannot give it to me later when you want to sell all your bass tackle and go catch a snook and a redfish. Yeah. No, never happened. Dude, it's happened more times than I can count. Yes. I'm not kidding you. Next thing I know, they're selling their Skeeter and they're buying a Hughes. They're selling their Skeeter, buying a Hell's Bay. I've converted more guys over, and then their wives are really pissed at me because now they're spending even more money. But anyway, that's another story. But anyways, yeah, it's a special thing. They fight. They're great fish. It's good to learn them. Really.
Well, guys, we are super excited for ICAST this year. We're super excited of all the products that we're launching here at Ahi, Promar. And please visit us at our website. Check out these baits, all the cool stuff that we have coming out. And if you're going to be at ICAST, come check out our booth. But until then, guys.
3008. Booth number 3008.
3008, yes.
Or 3008.
We're down there somewhere amongst all those folks. We'll be out there. Steven will be there. I'll be there with the team for any questions you guys have. But until then, guys, we will always, of course, see you guys on the water.